Which of the following is considered the best ground type of all time?
Hello, my name is Garchomp FJ, and today I'm going to be doing a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Emeralds using only Pokemon that suck their opponent's blood. Rules for a hardcore Nuzlocke are listed in the description, but in short, I am not allowed to level up past the level of the next gym leader's ace, no items in battle, and so on. I also play with Species Clause, which means I can re-roll encounters if the first Pokemon found happens to be one I've already caught. Blood-sucking Pokemon are fitting, because their very nature reminds me of an old flame, old and bitter enemy who was known for sucking the blood out of the friends within his inner circle, but more on that later. The Pokemon in this Nuzlocke will match the criteria of at least one of the following. Number 1, it learns a move at some point, not including Ek moves, that reduces the HP of the enemy Pokemon and increases its own HP as a result, such as Absorb, Dream Eater, and so on. Rule number 2, it has fangs. And rule number 3, it is a Ghost-type Pokemon. Now, there are a few different Pokemon that fits this criteria, but that is completely fine, as this Halloween-themed lineup is sure to leave all of its enemies completely dry and bloodless. Now, it should come to no surprise that between the 3 starters, my choice is Trico, a more aggressive slice-and-dice sort of Bloodsucker, but still a Bloodsucker nonetheless, that learns Absorb. So after defeating the disguised raccoon, I name him Igor, and move about my journey for blood. I teach May a lesson about why geckos are better than chickens, receive my Pokédex, and immediately begin catching my encounters. First off is Stein, the Wurmple from Route 101, which immediately evolves into a Silcoon and then a Beautyfly. Secondly is Morticia, the Poochhound found in Route 103. Third is Wednesday the Lotad from Route 102. Fourth is Agatha the Shroomish from Petalburg Woods. Fifth is Wanda the Whismer from Rusturf Tunnel. And sixth is Victor Frankenstein the Nincada from Route 116. Next, Wednesday evolves into Lombre, and then I take on the Joke of a Gym versus Roxanne, where I win handily thanks to a tag team effort from Wednesday and Agatha. Next is... Next is Dewford. I tried to get cute and control the Dewford Cave encounter by getting a guaranteed Zubat from Ultramarine Cave, but I guess that's only unlocked in the post-game, so that idea was a bust. I do find a Zubat in Dewford Cave, and I name him Dracula. On Route 107, east of Dewford, I fish up a Magikarp which I name Umbridge. On Route 110, I catch an Electrike named Jacob. This was all made possible thanks to delivering a letter to Stephen Stone, a responsible guy that has all his incoming mail directed to his father's business rather than his house in Mossdeep City. Also, I fight Brawly, who is also a joke thanks to Wednesday. Who is a joke thanks to Victor Frankenstein, Dracula, and Stein. After the smoke blows over, Igor evolves into Growfile. Morticia evolves into Mightyena, Wanda evolves into Loudred, and Dracula evolves into Golbat. On Route 117, I find an Oddish, who I name Uncle Fester, or just Fester for short. Very soon after, Fester evolves into Glue. Oh, and I guess Agatha evolves too, but that's not important. Up next is Wattson, the bane of most Nuzlockers' existence. But where others see a problem, I see a challenge. So I decide to bring Victor the Ninjask, Umbridge the Gyarados, Stein... Just kidding, this fight is serious, and having a bunch of grass types right now is definitely going to come in handy, and I will be using all of them. Also, I kept Victor Frankenstein as an Nincada to take advantage of his ground type, and Electrike is with us too, as well as Wanda, who I taught Flamethrower thanks to a relapsed gambling problem. Up first is Voltorb, and I lead with Victor Frankenstein. Volte uses Rollout, and I set up a Harden. Not wanting to take lethal damage, and in an attempt to sink Voltorb fast, I switch to Agatha on Rollout 2, and while setting up Leech Seed, their third rollout misses. They then hit Agatha with a Spark, which paralyzes, but is immediately cured thanks to a held Cherry Berry. Headbutt then handles the fake Pokeball. Next up is Electric. So Agatha starts off with Mega Drain while shaking off a Shockwave. She uses Mega Drain again and easily handles another Shockwave. 3 more Mega Drains later, and Wattson sends out Magneton. I don't know why I went for Leech Seed here. Maybe I was thinking I'd be outsped and could 1-2 punch for Leech Seed and then Mach Punch. But it really didn't matter because Magneton used Thunder Wave and then gets healed by a Super Potion anyway. Hindsight is 20/20. Things take a toll for the worst as Magneton then lands a Supersonic and brings me down to the yellow, but 1 Mach Punch through Parafusion, with help from Leech Seed, sinks the triple Magnetos and leaves Wattson with Manectric. I attempt to set up a Leech Seed, but Manectric goes for a Howl and Agatha hurts herself in confusion, so I switch to Victor Frankenstein to attempt to harden, but Manectric's Quick Attack shows how poorly that strat will work, so I switch again to Fester. Manectric sets up another Howl, and Fester hits back with a Poison Powder. Manectric uses Thunder Wave, and Fester hits with an Acid. Manectric uses Quick Attack, which shows that it would have KO'd Fester if it had crit. Fester then heals using the Citrus Berry that Wednesday thiefed off of Brawly's Makuhita, and I risk 1 more crit to hopefully get off 1 more Acid, which fails because of paralysis. I switch to Victor on a nasty crit risk Quick Attack, which I get rewarded with, and then to Wanda, who likely would have been a roll to be KO'd with a crit. I don't want to sack anyone here, but the writing on the wall suggests someone is going to die. I switch to Jacob, predicting the Shockwave, and sadly this is the end of Team Jacob. I could switch Igor and risk another crit, but Igor is going to have a lot of utility later in the run, and Jacob is just too much of a werewolf to trust in the late game. So I make the painful choice to put the wolf to rest, while sending in Victor Frankenstein to see the kill. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was a necessary one. Victor Frankenstein then evolves into Ninjask, which I delayed until level 25, so both it and its empty shell it leaves behind can learn Swords Dance. Speaking of the empty shell, the corpse needs its own name, so I named them Frankenstein's Monster. On the side, Umbridge evolves into Gyarados, one of the only water types available for this challenge. Also, if you haven't been paying attention, I catch Pokemon using the assistance of Professor 2-Ball FJ. On Fiery Path, I find a Coughing, which has little fangs, making it an eligible encounter, so I catch it and name him Malfoy, because he's a very toxic friend to have in the lineup. All of these early encounters creates enough species clauses that my Route 114 encounter is forced to be a Seviper, a more essential Mon for this run, who I name Buffy. Next up is Maxie, a pushover boss that isn't worth mentioning because he uses a dog, a bat, and a camel for his so-called monstrous team. Flannery, though, will require a bit of prep work as most of my mons are grass or bug types, so this won't be easy. First, I evolve Dracula into Crobat. Then, I teach Secret Power to Umbridge. After that, I remove all my grass and bug types to the sidelines, and am left with 3 poison types, a normal type, a dark type, and, well, Umbridge, for all the marbles that she's worth. So while there will be no super effective damage, we really don't have super effective damage either. So let's see how this plays out. First out is Numel, and I lead with Wanda and set up a Howl. I then use Stomp, which does way more damage than I thought, and sinks Numel after a Hyper Potion. I guess Stab came in clutch here. I then stomp Slugma with a one-shot and find myself on Camerupt already. I use Stomp on Camerupt and get the Lonky Flinch, so I stay into Stomp again since Camerupt only has Ember. Oh. I must have confused Flannery's Camerupt with Maxie's Camerupt that only knows Ember. Oops. At least her special attack is lowered by 2 stages now. I send out Malfoy for his debut and lead off with Sludge to try to poison her, which works. Talk about good RNG. Malfoy served his purpose, so I switch into Umbridge for an Intimidate and then use Dragon Rage for a ton of damage, enough to sink Hammer up with Poison Chip. I leave Umbridge in for the Smoky Turtle and use Dragon Rage while she just sets up Sunny Day. I use Secret Power to avoid healing range, and Torkoal uses Body Slam, and Umbridge somehow avoids the paralysis, and she finishes off Torkoal with one last Dragon Rage. While it wasn't a completely deathless fight, I am very happy with how the battle turned out. Next is the desert, so I start off in Mirage Tower and find a Trapinch, and I name her Hail Garchomp, which forces my Route 111 encounter to be a Cacnea. Before that though, I pick up the root fossil, which will probably have some kind of use later. I finally find a Cacnea after extensive searching, and I catch him handily and name him Edward. I make the journey to Petalburg and find myself facing a battle dating as far back as time itself. If you don't believe me, read the Bible. The struggle of father versus son has always been the pinnacle of internal growth and character development ever since the beginning of time. From the rebellious ancient stories of Jacob and Esau to several untold stories that we never got to hear about from Rome and Pompeii, to the tragic fall of Darth Vader and his eventual redemption, to finally this moment in time. Father versus son has been the matchup of all time, and this battle is surely going to be one for the record books, in a classic Nuzlocke ender that has left many speechless. In this perpetual rivalry that will never cease, I begin my father versus son battle, leading off with Morticia, and Norman leads off with Spinda. After an Intimidate, I use Rock Smash and get the lucky defense drop. Spinda then crits with the Facade, and Morticia uses Rock Smash, lowering Spinda's defense for a second time. I hard switch to Stein, who eats a very nasty critical hit Facade. Stein retaliates with Morning Sun and then suffers a Theater Dance. Stein uses Gust in hopes of getting Norman to waste one of his potions, but those defense drops left Spinda too frail to survive that. Next up is Vigoroth, and I hard switch to Umbridge for the Intimidate drop. Vigoroth slashes twice, and Umbridge uses Secret Power in hopes of getting the paralysis. I then switch to Igor on a Facade, and then back to Umbridge for another Intimidate. While eating another slash, I switch to Agatha, who eats a very nasty critical hit slash, and risk another crit to set up Leech Seed, and I'm rewarded. I switch to Umbridge again for another Intimidate, and she eats up another slash. I switch back to Stein on a boosted Facade, which is aided by Leech Seed Chip, and switch back to Umbridge for another Intimidate while taking another slash. Finally, after all this hard work so I can burn one of Norman's potions, and begin by setting up a Swords Dance with Victor Frankenstein, who also gets help from Speed Boost. Vigoroth finally switches to Feint Attack, and I set up a second Swords Dance while Vigoroth gets fully paralyzed. On my third Swords Dance, Vigoroth hits with Feint Attack, and now victory is nigh. As I go underground, I hit with a nasty Overkill critical hit dig, fully powered up for Linoon, so I just use Slash, which one-shots, leaving only the King of Sloths, which I will definitely outspeed, so I burrow underground to avoid the yawn. To my surprise, Dig only hits Slacking for half, but that's fine, as one more Dig will put an end to this father versus son fiasco, for now. I am then gifted the most powerful water move in the entire game. Remember when we used to have to work for HMs? Yeah, me neither. I then find a scientist in Respiro that revives my root fossil back into a Lileep, which I name Jekyll. I then get a good rod that unlocks Carvana in Route 118, which I name Bella. In Route 119, I find a Tropius, which I name Hermione. For the May fight, I use Buffy and take out all three of her Pokemon with hardly any resistance. Bella evolves into a Sharpedo, in case you were wondering. Next up is Winona, the bird Pokemon gym leader. I lead off with Malfoy, who I taught Shockwave to and immediately sees some results as he one-shot Swablu with it. Tropius is next, and Malfoy shocks me and Tropius both by needing only 2 sludges to get rid of her. Pelipper is next, and not only does Malfoy take care of her with 3 Shockwaves, but also forces Winona to waste one of her potions in the process. Yes, he did get a little hurt by confusion, but Malfoy is already doing much more work than I ever thought he would do in this run. I guess even toxic friends can have their moment to shine. Right? Skarmory is next, and I don't think Malfoy will be out here long, so I'll just do some chip damage and switch to Umbridge. But dang, wiping out 3 of Winona's Pokemon comfortably is no small feat. Umbridge uses Thunderbolt, which baits another potion, and 2 more Thunderbolts later she sinks the Steel Bird. Last up is Altaria, who immediately sets up a Dragon Dance, and Umbridge uses Dragon Rage. I then switch to Morticia for an Intimidate while shaking off a rather annoying Aerial Ace. Morticia eats an Earthquake to set up a Scary Face, and then I switch back to Umbridge, who uses Dragon Dance, resetting her stats back to 0. I send in Bella on a mean Aerial Ace for her debut, and finish her off with an Ice Beam. This was more work than I thought, but Malfoy was clearly the MVP of that fight. Very unexpected. Malfoy finally evolves into a Weezing, and on Route 120 I catch an Absol and name her Vanessa. On Mount Pyre, I find myself a shepherd named Abraham Lincoln, vampire hunter. The last May fight is also nothing to write home about. Dracula takes care of business and unlocks the department store. Oh, also Igor evolves in the Sceptile. In the Safari Zone, I find a Rhyhorn that I name Screenslaver. I head to the Magma Hideout and take out Maxie's Mightyena with Agatha. His Crowbot gives me some issues, but nothing Dracula can't handle with a few flies, and finally his Camerupt uses Rock Slide and instantly kills Dracula. I don't know what it is with Camerupts today, but I really just didn't see that one coming either. I send in Umbridge for an Intimidate and switch to Morticia for another who needs a takedown. I switch again to Igor and use a few Leaf Blades, which takes the camel down. That was more bloody than I thought, but at least we survived. Next up, Tate and Liza. One of the more difficult gym fights in the entire game, which I do a lot of prepping for, but I think I have an answer. They lead off with Xatu and Claydol, and I send out Victor and Edward. Victor is meant to bait Ancient Power, so I can switch to Morticia and set up Intimidate. Edward attempts to set up a layer of spikes, but just hurts himself in confusion. Xatu sets up a Calm Mind, and Morticia uses Bite on Claydol, and Claydol bounces back with an Earthquake. Edward uses Needle Arm, which leaves Claydol with probably 1 HP. Xatu sets up the Sun, and Morticia and Edward work hard on Claydol with a Bite and Needle Arm. I switch Edward out for Bella, and Xatu sets up another Calm Mind while Morticia bites Claydol again. Bella uses Surf, which deals light damage. Xatu sets up another Calm Mind, Morticia with another Bite, and Claydol with another Earthquake. Morticia heals with help from a Citrus Berry, and Bella sinks Claydol with a Crunch. Next up is Solrock, which is the only Pokemon left with an attacking move against Dark types. I shake off that confusion by switching Morticia for Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, for his debut, and it completely slipped my mind that Solrock knows Solar Beam, punishing Bella from surfing in the process. Even worse, I taunted Xatu and didn't even switch out Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, for some reason, and he too dies before being able to land a single Will-O-Wisp. Whoops. I send in Vanessa for her debut, and Morticia uses Scary Face on Xatu, while Solrock sets up the Sun. Vanessa and Morticia both tag Team Bite, which takes care of Solrock, leaving only Lunatone left, and essentially the win. The only way Tate and Liza can do damage now is through Confused Ray, and that's easily handled by switching out or by using Taunt. I switch Vanessa in for Edward, and Morticia bites Lunatone. I eventually set up Double Leech Seed, and now I can switch to the montage. After the fight, Hail Garchomp evolves into her final form, Vibrava, which is really a mid-caliber Pokemon, not super high base stats, and all-around low-class Pokemon. But using her for the Maxie double battle won't be an issue, because Maxie is awful and Tabitha is worse. I bring Morticia, Hail Garchomp, and Umbridge into the fight, and it goes swimmingly. By swimmingly, I mean I send in Hail Garchomp after Morticia faints, only for Crobat to take down Hail Garchomp as well. That's fine though, we've already established that Vibrava is a mid-level Pokemon. If it was able to evolve, it could become a monstrous beast that possibly the Elite Four would even use. It's so much potential. It's too bad Game Freak didn't expound on Vibrava more. I'm sure it would have made a lot of kids very happy. Now that I have access to Dive, I catch a Clamperl underwater named Bellatrix, and immediately trade evolve it into Huntail, since I'm not replacing trade evolving with using my out-of-game trade clause for this run. I stumble upon some ancient underwater ruins and get excited to explore, only to find out Team Aqua got here first and Archie challenges me to a pathetic fight. Although getting hurt in confusion after a swagger hurts, I beat Archie and watch a cinematic that was epic for all of us if it was 2005. I square off against Juan. Who is Juan? I don't know, some random NPC that has never had any significance on the plot and never will, even though he's officially a gym leader, according to Game Freak. The hardest of Juan's team, Love Disc, is sent off first. Why is she the hardest? Because I plan to sweep this entire team with Frankenstein's monster, but Love Disc needs to be dealt with first due to her Sweet Kiss move. I switch to Umbridge on a Water Pulse and immediately wipe her out with 2 Thunderbolts. Well, that was easy. Next up, oh, it doesn't matter because I will just switch in Frankenstein's monster and spam Swords Dance and Shadow Ball and watch the magic happen. Okay, so I used Leech Life against Crawdad, but it was still cool to see a little weak bug move with that low power do that much damage. Okay, so yeah, the fight is over. Told you this guy was an NPC. More seriously, next is Wally. He leads off with an Altaria, and I send in Malfoy for some more action. Now, Malfoy is not going to have much more utility after this fight, so I make it a point to whittle down Altaria as much as possible with a Shockwave and 2 sludges before Wally burns one of his potions. Next, I use 3 more sludges and switch to Edward once Gardevoir comes out. I set up 3 layers of spike, while Gardevoir just goes for double team. Apparently, Edward is still able to be hit by Future Sight as a dark type? Weird. After the 3rd spike, Edward fails a Leech Seed, but thankfully hits his 2nd one, which could have been rough with all those double teams. I start going for Feint Attack after Feint Attack after Feint Attack, nullifying all those double teams, and a few turns later, Gardevoir falls. Next up is Roselia, and this is where I learn only 3 layers of spikes can be set up at a time, and Roselia just uses a couple magical leaves. Edward sinks Rosie with a few Feint Attacks. Next up is Delcatty. She starts off by using Assist Magical Leaf, and Edward uses Leech Seed. She then assists Tri-Attack, and Edward Needle Arms her almost to death, which is completed by Leech Seed Chip. Edward has done plenty of work at this point, so I switch to Screenslaver for her debut, who resists a Thunderbolt. I try to get cheeky and go for a Horn Drill, which misses, and then I go for a Rock Blast, which deals respectable damage. I then try Horn Drill again, which rewards my impatience. You may have thought the encounters were over, but that couldn't be farther from the truth, as I find a lair which I named Jack Skellington. Remember when I said Malfoy isn't going to have much utility at this point? Well, I bumped into a cool trainer and he's Explosion, so yeah, there's that. Just when I thought this run wasn't going to feature all the Pokemon I caught, I was completely blindsided by several different double battles that completely blood-bathes my entire team. First off, Jekyll gets stuck on the battlefield after using an Ingrain and falls to a Sableye. Secondly, I was in another double battle and Umbridge fell to a Lantern, which honestly didn't feel super bad because at some point, many of you sympathize. We all really just wanted her dead more than Voldemort anyway. Third, I was caught napping at the very end of Victory Road, where I ran into a skill-swapping, slaking Gardevoir combo that ended up getting the better of all of the rest of my team. First, Screenslaver dies, and then, after skill-swapping Truant with Hermione, death is imminent as her only attacking moves are 2-turn moves, so ultimately, they die. Normally, this would be a run ender for most Nuzlockers. However, in the interest of the diverse number of Pokemon that I almost never get to use, combined with the time restraint involved, in getting this video ready for Halloween and not the day after, I decide to go with it and see if I can complete the run anyway with Pokemon that are left over and that were fortunate enough to not be with me during my first Victory Road run. First off, I evolve Jack Skellington into Aggron and recall Agatha and Victor Frankenstein from the box. And then I train up Bellatrix to a respectable level. The corpses of Malfoy and Umbridge will serve as my Victory Road HM slaves. This time I get through Victory Road without fighting and replace the corpses of Malfoy and Umbridge with Igor. The encounters are still not over yet as I go out on my way for a Bagon which I name Oogie Boogie. At the Sky Pillar, I catch a Sableye named Zero, and make a last-minute tactical risk by replacing him with Agatha for the Elite Four. For the Elite Four, my lineup is as follows: Bellatrix the Huntail, Buffy the Seviper, Zero the Sableye, Jack Skellington the Aggron, Oogie Boogie the Salamence, and Igor the Sceptile. Let's find out what this team is made of. I lead Bellatrix against my Deanna and immediately go for a Surf, which takes out the dog. Next up is Cacturn, so Bellatrix takes it out with an Ice Beam. I switch to Buffy for Shiftry, and she takes her out through confusion and a double team with a Sludge Bomb. Buffy then handles the last 2 of Sydney's Pokemon with 1 Sludge Bomb each. 1 up, 1 down. Up next is Phoebe, and I lead with Buffy. Buffy uses a few crunches to get to Dusclops, and then I hard switch to Oogie Boogie to get off a fly, and then have to switch because of the freeze. I switch to Jack Skellington, and he gets frozen too. So I switch to Bellatrix, and she finishes Dusclops with a Misted Water, boosted Surf. A strong Surf puts Banette into healing range, so I use the free switch into Igor, and he finishes her off with a couple Leaf Blades. And eventually, Sableye shares the same fate. Glacia the Ice Trainer can be very scary, but I have an idea. She leads with Celio, and I send out Buffy and use Giga Drain twice to sink the seal. Glacia is next, so I hard switch into Bellatrix on an Ice Beam. To my surprise, Bellatrix crits with Surf and one-shots Glalie into Celio number 2. I hard switch into Zero on a nasty Blizzard and go for a Fake Out. I get some back thanks to a Citrus Berry and Detect on the turn that she uses Hail. Yikes. I tried to dodge Blizzard, but it hits and crits. Darn. I send in Buffy next and use 2 Giga Drains, which takes down Celio. I risk a crit for Sludge Bomb and get rewarded, so I then hard switch to Jack Skellington, who takes down Glalie with a Brick Break. Wall Rain comes in and I make the hard choice to sack Jack on a Surf to bring in Buffy for free to use Giga Drain, sacrifice her on an Ice Beam for Igor, who can clean up with a Leaf Blade. It wasn't pretty, but we are still alive. Drake might prove difficult, but our odds are actually better than they seem. Bellatrix has Ice Beam, Oogie Boogie has Dragon Claw, and Igor is Speedy. For Shell Gun, I lead Bellatrix and use Iron Defense against what I thought would be a Protect, and get shocked to see a Rock Tomb. Either way, I use 3 Iron Defenses. And then I go for Ice Beam after getting hit by a Dragon Claw. Bellatrix levels up just in time for Altaria, so she goes for another Ice Beam after Altaria sets up a Dragon Dance, which one-shots. Kingdra's going to give me problems, so I just Ice Beam and hopes for a Lucky Freeze, which I don't get. Bellatrix takes a Surf nicely and uses Crunch, which doesn't get the special defense drop. One more Crunch after a Smokescreen does, however, and after the heal, she misses another Crunch. After another Surf, one more Crunch lowers Kingdra's special defense again, so I switch to Oogie Boogie on a Surf, and then takes a Body Slam before Oogie slings him with a Dragon Claw. Next up is a made-up Pokemon that looks like a Dragonfly, so Oogie Boogie uses Dragon Claw and forces a potion, and then high rolls for the second Dragon Claw. What a pathetic Pokemon. I feel like Game Freak was just trolling when they threw that random nonsense Ditto. Actually, yeah, it must have been a Ditto. Just having fun, I guess. Probably saw a Dragonfly and decided, ooh, let's try to transform into that. That's probably why it was so easy to kill. Yeah, that must be it. Anyway, last up is Salamence, which is going to prove tricky, so I switch into Igor on a Dragon Claw and set up a Rock Tomb, lowering his speed before Igor falls to a Flamethrower. This, however, puts Oogie Boogie into range to do some damage and free the course for Bellatrix to kill with an Ice Beam. I use Dragon Claw with critical hits? Whoa. Surely that must have saved the run right there. Down to only Bellatrix and Oogie Boogie. This is sure going to be tough. For Wailord, I lead with Oogie Boogie to intimidate and bait the Blizzard, and hard switch into Bellatrix. And yeah, you can see how desperate I am. I taught Double Team to Bellatrix and decided to spam it. After using Rain Dance, Bellatrix outspeeds Wailord thanks to Swift Swim. The multiple Double Team pays off, and I go for a couple crunches, one of which crits, and gets the special defense drop. After a potion, Bellatrix takes him down. Ludicolo is up next and dodges one Giga Drain, but I'm done rolling the dice, so I switch out to Oogie Boogie on a Giga Drain, and he sinks the Ludicolo with the Fly. Tentacruel is easily handled by one Earthquake, and then Melodic comes out. I hard switch back to Bellatrix on an Ice Beam, and use a weak Crunch after a Surf, and then get taken down by another Ice Beam. Oogie Boogie is my last hope, and things are looking bleak. I used Fly to waste one of Melodic's Ice Beams, but it's too little, too late. Melodic has plenty of Ice Beam PP, and Fly just isn't strong enough to pull off a one-shot. Unless it's a critical hit! Oogie Boogie, you beast. Even then, though, Gyarados has a strong Hyper Beam, and even after a critical hit Dragon Claw, it still just isn't enough to see Gyarados through Intimidate. Unless it crits too! What is this RNG? Last up is Wishcash, and Oogie Boogie clearly is showing why we should all fear him, as he hits a nasty Dragon Claw, while Wishcash counters with an Amnesia. Oogie switches to Physical Fly despite the Intimidate and gets hit back with a critical hit Surf. One more Fly puts Wishcash into the red, and Oogie luckily dodges a Hyper Beam. On the healing turn, Oogie goes for Earthquake for easy damage, and then switches back to Fly, which Wishcash countered with another Amnesia. I use Fly once again, but this time Hyper Beam hits and Oogie Boogie survived? Guys, be afraid. Be very afraid. Oogie Boogie, Oogie Boogie, Oogie Boogie! Fear him, for he is untouchable. The lone survivor of the Elite Four. The one who haunts the dreams of those that tried so hard to defeat the Boogeyman, but could never find a way to finish the job, coming so close yet so far. Oogie Boogie isn't just lucky. He's built different. And to prove it, I am pleased to announce that this run is not over. First off, I'm going to clear the party of all of the Fallen, except for Oogie Boogie, the MVP of the endgame, and replace them with the Benchwarmers, that had front row seats during the Elite Four run. I will withdraw Fester the Gloom, remember him? I then evolve Fester into a Vileplume, with the help from a Leaf Stone. I then recall Victor Frankenstein again, Stein, Agatha, and Vanessa, and level them all up to level 60 for a surprise bonus trial. That's right! We are going to daredevil this Nuzlocke even further by attempting to add one symbol to our badge collection before fighting Steven, and what better place to try our luck than the Battle Pike. It is, after all, the easiest battle facility to Nuzlocke through, and yet still presents a realistic challenge. Standard hardcore Nuzlocke still apply even during the trial run in the Battle Pike. If any Pokemon faints at any point during the facility, they are unusable, even if they are healed during the facility. For my first run, I will be using Victor Frankenstein, Agatha, and Stein, all of which are holding items that I think will be useful for the challenge. In my first room, I am immediately ambushed by a double battle against a Barboach and Abra. Agatha makes short work of Abra with a headbutt, and Victor slashes Barboach, almost to death while at future sights. It's dead. I then get extremely lucky over the next 7 rooms, as I am granted free entry into the next areas, albeit getting poisoned, which in hindsight is very bad, because if they faint, they are permanently dead. In room 11, I find another double battle, this time a Barboach and a Squirtle, which are both handled with relative ease by Victor and Agatha. In the 13th room, I allow Victor to get a status condition, since the room after is the end of the first cycle. This awards a battle point. For the second cycle, I elect to bring Oogie Boogie, Fester, and Vanessa, and immediately find myself in another double battle. I lead fly with Oogie Boogie, which causes Persian to miss with Slash. Petal Dance turns out to be uncontrollable, so naturally it hits Combuskin instead of Persian, but at least Combuskin faints with a fly. Persian uses Swagger on Fester, which immediately is cured thanks to a Help Persianberry, but because of Petal Dance RNG, Fester gets confused immediately after anyway. Oogie Boogie finishes the job with 2 more Dragon Claws. Over the next several rooms, I manage to slip through unscathed by status conditions, and before I know it, I find myself in the 13th room, ready to fight Lucy. None of my Pokemon get healed, and now we are ready to hit it off. As usual, Lucy leads off with Seviper, and I send in my trusty Oogie Boogie, and immediately use Earthquake, which it somehow survives. Seviper counters back with a Swagger, so I switch to Vanessa on a Crunch. Vanessa is holding the leftovers found in the trash can in the basement of the SS Tidal on the ferry ride over here. She bites the snake to death, and next comes Shuckle. This fight is usually a menace, but because Taunt exists, Vanessa can cheese this fight by simply spamming Taunt every other turn after getting powered up by Swords Dance. Last up is Melodic, and since Vanessa is fully powered up, 1 slash should be enough to... Well then. Not only did it not kill, but 1 Surf took Vanessa out. Well, that's awkward. Well, Fester is strong enough to kill with Petal Dance. Oh, right, Melodic outspeeds. Whoops. Well, Oogie Boogie gets to be the last man standing yet again, and just like that, we are short-handed for Steven after getting the luck symbol. Well, crap. I deposit Vanessa and Fester into the increasingly large box of the Fallen and recall the only Pokemon that remains, Frankenstein's monster. This will bring us back to 5. There is, however, one more encounter. There was once an alternate member of Spheal Team 6 that was put on reserve in case she was ever needed. This Spheal was created in a laboratory with the idea that maybe, just maybe, she could perform just as well as any other agent. A good friend of Jack Skellington did the designing. Ultimately, though, that opportunity never came for Sally the Spheal, so she was released into Shoal Cave to live out the rest of her days. Who better to take down Steven than the 7th Spheal Team member? Welcome to the team, Sally the Spheal. I can think of no one better qualified than you. Because we are operating outside the law on this one, Sally is free to evolve if and when she wants, and after some discussion, she wants to get as mean and as strong as possible, so she immediately evolves into Celio, and after some more hard work, she evolves again into a monstrous, beastly Walrein. Now that our team has been brought back up to 6, it is time to go on a hunt for blood, one last time. Oh, Steven, where art thou? Steven leads off with Skarmory, and I send out Oogie Boogie and immediately use Flamethrower for massive damage while Skarmory counters with spikes. Oogie uses Flamethrower again, which crits. Oogie is just doing Oogie things. Next up is Claydol, and Oogie uses Crunch twice while Claydol sets up both screens. Oogie flies and avoids Ancient Power and barely misses the kill. Surprisingly, Ancient Power does very little, so a Crunch takes him down. Cradily joins the fight next, and Oogie uses a Crunch, which gets the special defense drop, but Cradily hits hard with an Ancient Power, so I switch to Agatha on another one. He uses Mach Punch for massive damage, and Cradily forces himself on the battlefield with an Ingrain. But one more Mach Punch wastes the Rock Fossil. Next up is Armaldo, so I have Agatha set up Leech Seed, and Armaldo uses Aerial Ace. A move I was not expecting Twit to have. I send an Oogie Boogie for an Intimidate and Leech Seed, and set up with Fly for even more Leech Seed chip. When Oogie hits with Fly, Armaldo hits a hard action, but thankfully doesn't get the crit or a kill. Predicting a heal, and not wanting to lose Oogie Boogie, I switch into Sally for what feels like an eternal wait for her debut, ever since Field Team 6. Armaldo does in fact heal, and next, Sally proves just how capable she is with a Surf that one-shots without help from Mystic Water. Next up is Aggron, who can't hit Frankenstein's monster, so I switch them in, and oh, spikes. Well, that was anticlimactic. I bring in Stein and use Giga Drain, and Aggron hits a nasty Thunder. I risk staying in because odds are Aggron is going to miss a Thunder or two with its poor accuracy, and it pays off. Steven uses his millionth potion, and Stein recovers back to basically full HP thanks to another Giga Drain. I attempt to roll for an Omni Boost with Silver Wind, which doesn't work, and then Aggron finally hits another Thunder. After another. Wait, no, that was just 2. But either way, it was enough for Stein to faint after all that hard work. Now I bring Sally back in, now the holder of the new leftovers, and Steven yet uses another potion. As it happens, I could have just kept Sally in to begin with because one Surf was enough to handle Aggron. Last stop is Metagross, and Sally hits a strong Surf and handles a Meteor Mash like a champ. And then to my surprise, determined Sally gets a critical hit Surf, defeating Steven and winning us the entire run. Wow! It's no wonder she was being looked at as a candidate for Field Team 6. Sally is no joke. The 3 survivors of this Nuzlocke would end up being Victor Frankenstein, Oogie Boogie, and Sally the Spheal turned to Walrein. That's all for now, folks. Have a happy Halloween, and always, always, always remember to play through the critical hit.